The inspector, we'll be calling the Inspector General Committee meeting to order. Roll call of attendees.
State Attorney Alexia Cox. Present. Vice Chair Cruz.
Here.
Public Defender Daniel Eisinger. Chair Crydell.
Present.
Commissioner Kugler.
Here.
Commissioner Romano.
Here.
Commissioner Vara Garcia.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're here to discuss the ongoing processes in the department as well as the future. And that being said, let's see, who has do I have the minutes? The minutes have been distributed. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are accepted as presented. And then, is there any new business? Already in place.
Good afternoon, committee. To just recap, I'm Paul Mattiotto. I am the recruitment selection manager with the county, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come and meet with you this afternoon to talk about where we are in the Inspector General recruitment process and next steps. So we have a presentation here, and I think that's going to help kind of guide us with what to do moving forward.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with what's happened. So we advertised this position from January 9th through January 30th of this year. This position was advertised on the county career website, on Indeed, and on the Association of Inspectors General career website as well. The advertisement closed last Friday. Applicants were requested to submit a cover letter, minimum salary requirements, and a resume. So we received applications for this position, and at the committee's direction from last month, I evaluated the applications received, and I evaluated them to determine if they met the minimum qualifications stated in the ordinance and in the advertisement as well. So these minimum qualifications include a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university, and 10 years experience in any one of a combination of the following fields, which are as a federal, state, or local law enforcement officer or official, or as a federal or state court judge, or as a federal, state, or local government attorney with expertise in investigating fraud, mismanagement, and corruption, or as an inspector general, certified public accountant, or internal auditor, or as a person with progressive supervisory and management experience in an investigative public agency similar to an inspector general's office. There's an additional qualification in that candidates may not be employed by Palm Beach County or any governmental entity subject to the authority of the Office of Inspector General during the 2-year period prior to selection, unless such employment has been with the Office of Inspector General of Palm Beach County. So our response to the posting, we received 13 applications, 12 of which I deemed as qualified against those minimum qualifications I just mentioned. Included in the advertisement were several preferences. And those preferences included certifications for a certified inspector general, a certified inspector general investigator, a certified inspector general auditor, a CPA, a certified public accountant, a certified internal auditor, and/or a certified fraud examiner. So I turned over to the committee on Friday afternoon after the position closed, the applications that we received, along with my initial assessment of their qualifications as to whether they met those minimum qualifications stated. In the meantime, I also assessed the candidates that indicated that they had additional certifications. So if we could pull up the preferences spreadsheet. You zoom it a little. A little bit more. Okay. So I notated, after reviewing the applications, which candidates or which applicants had indicated that they had those preferences. And that's on the spreadsheet, which you should have a copy of as a committee as well. So if they indicate they had it, you'll see in the cell marked that I marked it as yes. If they did not indicate they possess that certification, I indicated no. Okay. Erica, if you could go to the list of applicants.
May I ask you a question?
Certainly.
The chart that we just saw where the various designations were populated, it's a remarkable difference in terms of qualifications from our last run at this when we hired our current IG. There's next to no advanced designations beyond diplomas for these individuals. Very few CPAs.
Very few CPAs.
CFEs are limited. It's a remarkable shift in terms of qualifying designations.
We had a shorter advertisement period on this particular process than the one in 2014. The 2014 advertisement period was roughly a month. We had slightly shorter here, which is 3 weeks. We posted it again in a particular websites that we felt were appropriate for this particular position. But I don't have a good grasp as to why we didn't have a larger turnout. I know the last application period, we received almost 70 applications, and I reviewed those the past week. There was a number of who were completely unqualified for the position. So we have less of those candidates, but I do agree that we have less total candidates that have some of those advanced certifications that are preferences within the advertisement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Back to the presentation, if we could. Okay. So I want to talk very briefly about selection process. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I want to talk about the selection process that we ran 12 years ago in terms of the interviews and other options as well. Okay. So there's the two basic selection processes or interview processes that I envision are what I'd call a sequential candidate interview format, which is a traditional interview, and then we have more of a round robin interview format. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one. The traditional or sequential candidate interview format would include one candidate being interviewed by the committee at a time. The committee will ask its questions of that candidate. That interview process will conclude, and the next candidate will come in and interview in front of the committee. So what we're most familiar with, probably in our own workplaces, as a standard traditional interview process. There's what I characterize as a round robin interview format as well. And if you had viewed the county administrator and county attorney recruitment processes or interview processes from earlier or from last year, very similar to that, in that instead of the candidates coming in one at a time to complete their own individual interviews, you would have the candidates arrayed in front of you, and they would take turns answering the questions. Sorry.
Yes, through the chair.
Yes.
Was the process for hiring the county attorney the round robin? It looked like they were all seated up here. Okay,
It was, yes.
thank you.
So you're welcome. So one of the intents behind that is these are public meetings. The hiring process, the interview process is a public meeting. Having all candidates arrayed and in front of you does not allow a later candidate to view the interview process of an earlier candidate and getting some or being perceived to get additional information about the process before they're interviewed. So there's a benefit to that. The process would work where candidate 1 is asked question 1, then candidate 2 is asked question 1, they provide their response, candidate 3, however many candidates there are. The next interview question is asked first of candidate 2, and then candidate 3 would respond, candidate 4, and then we'd rotate back. So that not one candidate is getting the question, the first question each time. And the process would continue until the committee has asked all its questions that it deems appropriate. In conjunction with the county attorney and county administrator kind of round robin format, the individual candidates actually came in the day before the interviews in front of the board and met one-on-one with each county commissioner. That could be an option here as well. And that would not be convening as the committee. That would be a one-on-one setting. So I'd ask, do you have any questions about either one of those two processes?
Could you go into a little more detail about the pros and the cons of each process?
Yeah, the perceived pros for the traditional interview is that's what obviously individuals for the most part are familiar with. You're going to have, as a committee, being able to fully ask questions of that one candidate in turn. So if you have 7 questions or 14 or however many, you're going to be able to answer them or have those questions asked of that one candidate. And that's going to be a process that candidates are going to be most familiar with, right, for their own interviews in their own organizations. The perceived con on that is the public nature of the process, in that candidates who are scheduled earlier in the process are not going to be able to view those interviews that are held of later candidates. However, later candidates are going to be able to view the interview processes of those who came before them. And there could or could not be a perceived advantage to that. We would generally, as HR, recommend that all candidates are asked the same questions. There could be an opportunity, certainly, for follow-up questions by the committee if they wished. But for consistency's sake, we would recommend in that process that all candidates are asked the same questions in the same order. So again, there could be a perception, whether it's accurate or not, that candidates who are scheduled later in the process and have the ability to view earlier candidates' interviews may or may not have some advantage to that. The round robin process, the pro of that is that the con of the traditional interview process is minimized. You have, again, the interviewees arrayed before you. There'll be an opportunity to ask questions in turn, so no one is potentially perceived to have an advantage in that process. The con, or one of the cons on that, would be the fact that it's very unfamiliar for candidates. They're going to be sitting right next to, the individuals who are competing with them in the process. There can also be an opportunity for a candidate who's asked a question later in that round of questioning to essentially use the responses of the earlier candidates to their advantage or the other candidate's disadvantage. So they could build off those earlier answers. It's kind of what's the the greater benefit versus, the least amount of drawback to each process. There's, consideration for providing the candidates the questions in advance so everybody knows what the questions are. I generally would not advocate that, especially in the days of AI now, where folks could really research an answer and parrot the response of artificial intelligence to you as the committee. I still think there's value to candidates being able to speak extemporaneously in front of the committee and provide well thought out responses in that setting.
Is that the one you recommend?
I'd recommend, I'll go back to 2014, which is the board or the committee at the time had engaged in the traditional interview process. One candidate comes in, they're fully assessed by the committee. That candidate leaves or remains if they wish to. It's a public meeting, but the next candidate is interviewed in turn until those interviews are complete of all the candidates. I think, and I'm not trying to hedge one way or the other here or not give you a straight answer. I think there's benefits to both, and I think and there's drawbacks to both, and I think it's really the committee's call what you would want to, what's more important for you. The more, I'd say, natural and organic traditional process versus one that's a bit more mechanical, but that helps to maintain a perceived level of consistency. And that would be more the round robin.
Good.
Could I ask just one more question, and then I promise I'll...
Okay.
In the round robin, I've never been a part of that before, and I'm imagining that the answers might be more guarded because you're sitting there thinking, what is it they want to hear most compared to competition with the others? But I've never been through that before. Could you give us some insight of how you thought it worked out in the ones you've been involved with?
I'm dovetailing on your question, and could you possibly answer why the county commission decided to do a round robin for the county attorney? Are you allowed to share that?
We'll have
Mr.
we'll
Khan
have
is coming
Dr.
to...
David Kahn, our HR director,
Yes.
who's involved in those.
Good afternoon. I'm David Kahn. I'm the HR director, and I was working with the board for the county administrator interview selection and for the county attorney selection. The reason the board decided to use a round robin was because of the perception and the possibility that later candidates would have heard the questions, would have tailored their question, and would be at an advantage if they were asked later in the process. In having a round robin, they were all sitting up front at the same time, and they were taking turns answering first, and like a round robin, they would just go around on, so whoever answered first would answer second the next time, and so on. That was their reasoning, and it worked out well enough in the county administrator process that they decided to do it again during the county attorney process.
So they did it for both positions?
They did.
I didn't remember Madam Bruce. Okay.
Question two. So for both of those, there were just limited number of applicants that you did that with, right?
Yes, the pool was narrowed down before we got to that point.
How long do you anticipate, if it were the traditional, how long do you think the interviews would last?
So, one of the limiting factors obviously is going to be, or one of the driving factors here is going to be how many candidates that the committee chooses to interview, right? But per interview, if I recall correctly, when I viewed the 2014, it was roughly an hour and 20 minutes each. That's going to be driven obviously by the amount of questions that you want to ask and the time limit on each. And we'd certainly advise that there's a time limit in terms of the candidate's response to each question.
And were all the interviews, I guess it couldn't have been all done on the same day.
I believe they were all done on the same day.
Yes,
They all were on the same day?
yes, they were.
I don't, I mean, just my personal take on it right now, if it's not a huge number, and if it's one after another on the same day, I don't see it as a huge issue in terms of them being able to potentially get information from a prior. If it was over other days, if it was over many, many hours, maybe it'd be a little bit different. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
So this is to do what we call the traditional interview. Yeah, I think certainly there'd be a perception, you know, from my perspective, that stretching it out over multiple days, someone may definitely have more of an advantage, you know, but a back-to-back-to-back setup, I think that perception may be minimized. You know, we're not able to sequester them. You know, it is a public meeting, so they would be able to view it. They'd be able to be here in chambers, you know, watching the other candidates interview. But I would suggest, depending on the number of the candidates that the committee wishes to interview, that they proceed apace, one after another, to help at least minimize the perception of that.
One quick question for you. I think you mentioned with option 2, the round robin format, one of you mentioned that the number of candidates was narrowed down. If we were to proceed in that way, is it your recommendation that that be the preliminary step to narrow it down, or you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there would be certainly an item that if the committee wishes to discuss today, narrowing down the pool of candidates from the 13 that applied down to a number that the committee wishes to interview.
Yeah, we're under no obligation to interview all of them.
You're under no obligation to
thank you.
do so.
So I have a suggestion. My suggestion would be is that we first go through a process of narrowing down the candidates to determining what candidates we want to interview. My suggestion for that determination would be that it would be a majority of the committee that would decide whether somebody is interviewed or not. So somebody suggests an individual to be interviewed. If that person gets 4 votes or more, they would be on the interview panel, however we do it. If they don't get 4 votes, then they would not be interviewed. Then we decide from that point, depending on how many applicants we have that we want to interview, then we decide what process we want to do, whether it's the individual process or the round robin. The only other thing that I would want to say is, as to the round robin format from my perspective, it helps us determine the contrast between the applicants in a one-time setting. And so it gives different commissioners, if they feel appropriate, to highlight some of those differences and then ask some of the other candidates how maybe they perceive those differences or how they would act in a scenario where somebody has shown themselves to set apart, whether it's positive or negative.
Okay, and I guess if we go by your little matrix here, there are 5 that meet none of these certifications, if I did my counting right. So that may be a consideration for the committee to begin to narrow down the list.
But also one that's listed as having some of the qualifications, I think, wasn't actually qualified per the other requirements in the job listing.
I thought this list was all the ones that were qualified.
This list is all the folks that actually applied. It does include the one applicant that I deemed as not qualified, just to present in the event that that particular candidate had a certification. I wanted to present that to you as well. That particular applicant did not have a certification.
It was 2, correct? That ended up not being qualified. There was the initial one and then There was the additional one when you did the second review?
Yes, and
Okay.
that second candidate being an employee of a municipality that the IG has jurisdiction over.
Right, okay. I just want to make sure I had.
They withdrew their name independently.
Okay.
Yep.
So as we sit here right now, can you just tell us which individual on this list from your review did not meet the minimum qualifications?
That is the first individual on the list, and that is Brown Howard.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair? So certainly those that didn't meet the requirements that we put in the RFP should be taken right off the list. But how do you propose, are you proposing that we narrow the list down just based on the paper review, considering they've all been found to be qualified?
Yes.
Yes,
How do you do that?
I would be in favor of that. I don't know about my other colleagues here.
But how do you do that without meeting the people and judging their passion, their dedication? I mean, since they're all qualified, they're all equally.
Well,
maybe
the
not-
certifications, I think, add an extra level of qualifications that some have and some don't. And I think that's pretty important, because after 14 years, there are a lot of certifications and more people that have them now, as Chair Crydell pointed out.
The only counterpoint I would make is I don't think certifications necessarily tell the whole story. Look at all of the people in public office today that are Yale and Harvard graduates that are dullards.
Right. I guess looking at, 'cause I've looked through the resumes, I think most of us have, there are some that their IG experience is on the federal level. In fact, a preponderance of them are. And their focus has been very different, in my opinion, than what our IG needs to be. So just because, so to me, saves time, certainly saves the taxpayers money by at least making that cut ourselves today. But that's just me.
I concur.
Aside from the preferential qualifications, are there any other recommendations from staff for consideration when we're thinking about how to weed out certain individuals?
I said better than I did.
So I certainly want to defer to the ordinance that has, the clear minimum qualifications. So we have the one candidate that, again, we assessed as not qualified. There was a preference for, obviously, those 6 certifications. And also, forgive me one moment, Erica could bring up the advertisement. And let's go to the preferences section. And if you could blow the, increase the size of the application, or the advertisement there.
So are you, anybody, are we suggesting that we eliminate them based on the number of certifications or the type of certifications?
Right. The, as I understand it, the judgment is entirely our committee by vote to decide what to do.
There was a statement, I'm sorry, under the preferred qualifications, along with the certifications, were OIG-related skills. So that I would certainly defer to the committee in terms of their best judgment, what those OIG-related skills might be, particularly in light of, or in reference to this particular position. And that could be an opportunity for the committee to have discussion about that.
Right. I just remember in the hiring of the county attorney, there was a vote, the names came up, and majority, then that candidate was taken. If the candidate did not meet the minimum votes, that candidate was taken off. And I think that's our judgment to do.
Yeah. Right. So my suggestion for doing it would just be to, other than Mr. Brown, who didn't meet the minimum qualifications, to just go through the list one by one in the order that they're in and take a vote of the committee. And based on a majority of the vote of the committee, that person would either be in or out for the interview process.
Is that a motion?
Motion to perform the culling down process for interviews in the manner I just suggested.
Second.
All those in
In
favor?
Well, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Passes.
No, one nay.
No.
Commissioner Romano.
I'm sorry?
Commissioner Romano was not in favor.
Waiting.
He nayed.
It's quiet, but he made.
No, he did. And so Commissioner Romano, is there a different process that you would suggest that we go through for this?
I'm okay. The majority's voted, I'm okay. We don't have to please me.
No,
I
no,
appreciate the effort,
but
I think if they're all qualified, I mean, like, for example, I don't, and maybe it's because I'm not an inspector general and I don't know all of the ins and outs, but each of these certifications were important to us, right? So I honestly don't know if a CPA is more qualified than a certified inspector general.
Well, for example, there was one candidate who was a sort of an auditor at TransUnion that really, although he met the basic qualifications, to me was not what we need. I mean, you guys had just a bullet, you had your matrix and you asked for that. And it's our job to say, will that fit in with Palm Beach County's needs and what the OIG office here is all about? So, again.
Could I ask for this concession, though, that we have a chance to take this home and study it and then do the culling process at the next meeting?
Yeah, although we had them,
Say it again?
we did have these
Okay.
in the Dropbox.
All right, you're right.
But yes, and I agree that we did have them, and I want to make sure that now that we are refining the process and knowing what it is that we're going to be charged with doing, should we, or is it best that those who need it do have the time to really, review them and make an informed decision? I'm just throwing that out there. But if everyone is ready to vote and make those decisions today, that's fine. I just want to make sure that, we give everyone enough time, since we have sort of refined what our process is going to look like going forward.
Maybe I could provide some context. Here's my overriding concern. If we just direct this toward the appointment of a particular person, that person's position will always be in doubt. I want whoever the next Inspector General is to be bulletproof, to know that they went through a process and were deemed to be the most qualified person, so that there can never be, there will always be somebody that'll have something to say.
Right.
Every
Just for me, I
organization.
think you're absolutely right. However, I think we can get a little bit farther along because we have a time and a money. It will cost more the more that we lengthen this, and not that it's not worth it, but I think we have the expertise on this committee, having worked with the IG here for 8 years, some of us for 12 years, to know what this county needs.
Okay?
I'm going to add one more. Chair Crydell, you're the chair. You get to speak
Go
first.
ahead. Maybe I don't have to ask the question now. Go ahead.
Yes. So my suggestion on that is that I do not think that we should take a vote today if there is anybody on this dais that does not feel comfortable taking that vote. If it's one person would like additional time to review, then we should all take that additional time to review and come back when everybody feels that they have all of the information and had the opportunity to review, to assure that everybody is confident that our process is clear and unequivocal and educated.
I will say I agree with that. Personally, if we were going to do that, I would ask that we come back sooner rather than later. Selfishly, due to my own time constraints, I don't want to miss a big chunk of this process.
We have a requirement of 48 hours, right? To me, this can't wait weeks, not even a week.
I have a thought.
Okay.
could we go home and study these and then, I don't know if this is even allowed. Where's our counsel? Do we have a counsel here?
County.
If it is even allowed for this, but would it be possible and would it be advisable for each of us to study this, rank the candidates, and just submit that rank here and let him see who gets the most votes, and then we decide, what do we want to narrow it down to? 5 people, 3 people, 10 people?
So the Sunshine Law requires that all phases of the decision-making process be done at a public meeting. So I would not recommend going that route
Okay.
of ranking outside of the meeting and emailing.
The only other one question is that I have is, if we had certain preferences in our advertisement, if the question is, would we want to take a vote today on the people that do not have those qualifications or the preferred specifications, because why else would we put it in the advertisement if we didn't expect that our next Inspector General would have at least one of those qualifications?
Good point. Yeah, I think we can drop off the ones you found didn't meet the qualification. I mean, yeah, 100%.
So I think we should,
It's only 2.
Wait, hang on a second.
yes, sorry.
I've been sitting here listening, and I'm the only person here with any of these qualifications. Okay? So I might be in the best position to say something. If you've got a shopping list of qualifications that are irrelevant in a lot of environments, and some that are relevant in a greater number of environments. And the first thought that any hiring manager has who hires technical talent is, what is that person's commitment to their profession? And if you can't pass a damn exam for a certification, you probably are in the wrong employment position. The hardest exam of them all is the CPA exam, because it's uniquely designed. It's harder than it has ever been, and it is, and the regulation of the profession. Now, you've got 2 folks here on this matrix that don't have any qualifications, not just one.
Yeah, 4.
I think there's 4.
4? Okay. To me, they're not dedicated to the profession, just as in out of the box. If I had a stack of resumes and I would, if somebody didn't have a designation, they're applying for the wrong position, because they will fail. So
see what you're saying.
do your first cut, which is just kind of like math, and then the questions need to be both procedural and sociological. It's difficult but necessary to understand someone's intention relative to their careers. And you only get to do that by talking to them. Having been part of this process a dozen years ago, that's what made the difference, was who they, Emerson said, "Who you are speaks so loud I can't hear what you're saying." That's what we need to be doing. We need to be listening like that. And we're not going to get it on paper, I don't think. It's difficult. I'd like to ask you a question. You've done this dance many times before, and every circumstance is different. Your candidates are always all over the map, and it's sort of like when somebody's being deposed. almost everybody who's deposed gets to the end, and they're having a thought, God, I wish I'd been asked this. How do we get to, with this selection process, a place where we've asked the question? I think it's critical in the decision-making process because it's part of your database.
That you fully assessed each candidate, essentially, is,
This is why you're going to be missed.
I'm sorry?
This is why you're going to be missed.
Well, my job is to ask the question nobody thinks of.
But just to remind you, you did tell us just a few minutes ago that if you haven't gotten a special certification at all, you're not serious in your profession, so you would knock those out.
That's a no-brainer, in my opinion. Because they just have not put the time, effort, and money and their blood into their profession if they haven't paid the price of suffering to study and pass.
So I think we could meet Commissioner Mike's wishes, and I'm really moved by what you said. I count 5 people on this list that could fall off just because of what you just said. And that brings us down to however many are left.
I think that
So-
leaves 9.
I would second your motion, Mike, if you wanted to move to strike these names: Brown, Key, McElligott, Savadol, Tomney.
So I would move to strike from consideration for the position Howard Brown, Christopher Key, James McElligott, I apologize if I mispronounced that, Scott Savadow, and Brian Tomney.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That leaves us with 8.
leaves you 8 by my count.
But you did tell us Brown was already gone anyway, right?
Yes.
I'm never speechless, but I think I've talked too much, so let's.
No, I was just saying, we've gotten down to 9, so do you have more on your presentation? You have some, what, next steps for us?
Sorry, back to the presentation. At the bottom. Thank you.
Just looking at
So-
logistics, yeah. I didn't know
Yeah,
if you-
so obviously some of this is going to be driven by number of candidates, right, that the committee wishes to interview. But some considerations here are, for either process, whether it's a traditional or it's a round robin, the committee members would take turns asking questions. The candidate responses would be timed to make sure we're, again, proceeding through those interviews. The process should be consistent. In other words, the same questions asked of each candidate. And obviously, the committee is going to ultimately make the decision who their selected candidate is. I'll bring up the ordinance itself. Which states that after thoroughly reviewing qualifications, background information, and personal and professional referrals, the Inspector General Committee, the process is notifies the county attorney of its selection, and the county attorney will notify the board that a selection has been made. After that, there's contract involved between the selected candidate, the county attorney's office, HR, and I believe a designee by the Commission on Ethics.
Correct.
And I guess just to ask, at this point, I guess we need to tell you who and how many we want. Is that correct?
If the committee is prepared to,
But then you would do the background check, just on the ones that we bring to the table. Okay.
yeah, so also in the ordinance, it indicates that the HR department will contract with an appropriate entity to ensure that background checks are conducted on the candidates selected for interview by the Inspector General Committee, and that the results of those checks are provided to the committee in advance of the interviews. So background checks would include a criminal background check, a confirmation of their educational credentials, so their degrees, a confirmation that the certifications that they're indicating that they have, particularly if that's a decision point by the committee, that they actually do possess them. And again, also, within the language of the ordinance, it talks about personal and professional referrals. It doesn't indicate that those need to be provided in advance of the interview. It's for the selected candidate, after the review of the qualifications, background information, and personal and professional referrals. Again, the Inspector General Committee shall notify the county attorneys of its selection. What I would propose, if the committee agrees to it, that for the selected candidates that the committee wishes to move forward with, that again, we conduct the criminal background checks, the verification of educational credentials, the verification of the certifications, that we also obtain those personal and professional references, and those could be in the form of a letter, that once we receive them from all the selected candidates, that they're provided in advance of any interviews. And I think that would provide you some additional information as a committee. It also will ensure that that process is done before a selection is done, and there's not a holdup waiting for that to happen. So I'd propose that, and the committee can determine if they wish to engage in that process.
How long would that process take?
So the background checks for us typically would come back within less than a week of them completing the requisite forms. The educational credentials typically is less than a day. The certifications, I've already reached out to the various certifying agencies to determine what their process is to verify certs. It's going to be driven by their length. At least the processes that we, for the most part, have control over would be, let's say, a week. And for them to provide the personal and professional references, it's obviously as quickly as a candidate can obtain those from those personal and professional contacts.
We can give them a deadline.
I would give them a deadline, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So my recommendation, having taken to heart what Chair Krydell said, is that we, anybody who has met the qualification, at least one of these qualifications that we have not crossed off, that all of those individuals get set for interview. My preference would be to do it in the round robin format, but given the number of candidates, which is 8, I think it would need to be done in 2 sessions that would be back to back, which each session would include 4 candidates, because I think 8 is too cumbersome. And then there should be a deadline for all of the candidates to submit the form so that we can do the background checks. If they don't submit the form in time, then they would be weeded out of that process. And then there needs to be a deadline for submission of any references, professional or personal, that they want us to consider in their application at a certain time prior to the interviews.
Can I just ask a question? Do you think we would need to see all 8, or think we could get down to 4?
So
Just on our own? Because there are travel schedules and all kinds of things that are opened up. I guess the thing
we
is,
could take
it has to be up to
I think we need
us.
to talk to all 8.
We could take a vote on that,
Yeah, I think
and we
we
could
probably should.
decide, but if we're going to do that, we need to decide the parameters before we take the vote.
Right. I agree. And what I'd like to add on to what you're saying, seeing as I won't be here at the next time, we are hiring an inspector general, correct? Look at your matrix. How many times do you see that qualification for each candidate?
I see 3 of them.
Yeah. You see 3.
I missed that.
How
Only
many-
3 on the
you know,
matrix.
You've got the matrix there
Right.
with, the designation titles.
First column.
So these 3.
Right.
Okay. How many of our candidates have something that says Inspector General?
Excuse me, Chair? Chair?
Mike?
Yes.
May I be recognized, please?
I'm sorry?
May I please be recognized?
Yes.
Can we please have everyone speak into the microphone for accuracy of the record, please?
Yeah, I'm terrible at it. I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
But you had said CPA is the
But
hardest.
CPA is the mother lode, okay? But we are being very specific because CPA is so multidisciplinary, it covers everything. And that's the nature of testing to get the certificate. I mean, it's a unique exam education process. But what I'm saying is, we're hiring for Inspector General. We have on the list that title. How many people have that title of being a certified Inspector General?
3.
Your point's well taken.
It's game over.
Yeah, I guess just to follow on, Mr. Chair, I agree in a perfect world, we'd see everybody, but we have a duty to the public, 2 duties. One, to get the right person, and not to excessively spend their tax dollars. And they rely on us to use our judgment in some of these decisions that we're going to have to make here. And I thank Chair Kreidel for pointing that out, the obvious, that there are only 3 candidates. And 3 to 4 seems to be what you would actually bring in for an interview in positions like this. We don't have to, there's no reason, in my opinion, all due respect to Commissioner Romano, to interview any more than 3.
How much is due? Just kidding.
Got to bring me a jar of honey, I'll feel better next time.
Okay.
So I just want Commissioner Kreidel, when you were discussing earlier about the qualifications of individuals and the fact that they have shown commitment to their profession, what I understood from that, and I think maybe my understanding was wrong, so I want to clarify it. What I understood from that was anybody who meets any one of these qualifications should then be judged on their individuality as people and their individual experience in addition to their qualifications. What I'm understanding now is you're saying, yes, but what we are specifically looking for here is an inspector general. So the qualification that we really need to focus on is inspector general. And those are the individuals that, from your perspective, we should interview to the exclusion of the others because they have that qualification.
The word is relevancy.
Understood?
I did want to add one thing, Chair. Going back to the preferred qualifications, I just want to make sure that we're staying true to the spirit of what this states. We talked about holding one or more of the following professional certifications, but it also says OIG-related skills and/or. And so I just want to make sure that we point that out, because if we are saying that we want someone with the OIG-related skills and one of these or multiple of these certifications, or are we saying OIG-related skills or?
Well, Madam State Attorney, I think that's very important. However, there are staff members that we all know in the IG's office right now that have all of these other credentials too. It's not like there's only one person. But I think we tried to cast a wide net, and we got not as many as we thought, but if we had written it too specific, it might have been a much smaller pool. So we've sort of seen what's out there right now, and since the head person needs to serve as the IG, being a certified IG, I'm not sure there was a certified IG qualification back 14 years ago, was there? There was? Okay. I know there was a CPA.
John had it.
John already had it, okay. Well, could I make another, did you make a motion? You made a recommendation?
I have not made a motion yet.
Okay. Could I make a recommendation, make a motion that we consider the 3 candidates who hold the Certified Inspector General certification to have the HR department at the county do the due diligence that we have to do prior to the interview? I think that, I don't know if I got that out the right way. Okay, I need a second if anybody's going to do that.
Second.
Okay.
Chair
you've got a
can't
call.
second.
Any discussion?
Microphone.
You're the chair. You should.
Chair
Now that
can't,
we're on this point,
chair can't second a motion.
No, but he can call discussion, right?
Second.
okay.
restate
Any
the motion?
further discussion?
Yes, please. Can we just restate the motion?
Yes.
Am I on?
Can't hear.
Yeah.
Oh,
you wanna
it's
do
me.
it?
Okay. Yes, I move that the Inspector General Committee move forward with the 3 candidates who hold the Certified Inspector General qualification and bring those folks in for an interview after the county HR department has done their due diligence.
So we're clear, that's Dillard, Dove, and Zakel?
I'm sorry, Vice Chair. Who was the
there are
second
4.
for that motion, please?
I've forgotten now. Was it
Kugler.
you? Oh, okay, Kugler. Okay, sorry.
That'd be 4 candidates.
Which, can we name them, just so we're clear on the record?
No, it's 3.
There's only
candidates.
3.
You sure?
I have Dillard, Dove, and Zakel.
Correct.
That's Inspector General too.
Yeah, that's 3.
Okay,
I think she didn't hear you. The 3 are
okay.
Dillard, Dove, and Zakel.
What about Kurdar, who has Inspector General Investigator? Do you want to consider that as one more layer?
I would, but
Actually, that just,
We can't hear you down here, sorry.
he asks if we want to consider Kurdar because he's a certified Inspector General Investigator.
right, I think that brings it to 4. That's actually a good idea.
Yeah.
That's the only other one that has both.
Right.
I would move to include, I was going to suggest that as well. I would move to include Jim Kurdar as
You're
number 4.
amend the motion, yeah, okay.
I second the motion to amend.
All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment passes.
Our clerk has a question.
Can you talk into the microphone?
Can you please say it into the microphone so I can get the record accurate, please?
Okay. Moved that the finalist to move forward.
We can't hear you.
Still can't hear me?
No.
Okay.
I'm friends with you.
Well, yeah, no. Move that the following candidates be interviewed. Colinthia Dillard, Matthew Dove, Jim Kurdar, Anthony Zakel.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nice.
It passes.
Okay. That's tolerable, manageable.
Okay.
So
Can,
do we need to set the next?
Yes, because we have a baby on the way.
Yes.
So if the committee wanted to discuss dates or a date for the interview process and also what that process would look like.
so my recommendation would be, at the risk of me being in trial during this, doing it after the Commission on Ethics meeting on March 5th, and that it be a round table or round robin type interview process with all 4 candidates.
Second.
But if you're in trial, we won't have a quorum, right?
No, we have 7 on this.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
No, it's okay, March 5th.
There's a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
All right. The other question is, can the HR department set the deadline for signing off on whatever approval the candidates need to give to do the background check, or do we as the committee have to set that time period?
I don't know that you need a motion for that. It's more mechanical.
So if the committee wants to specify that, it's within your purview, but that's not in a requirement in the ordinance, so HR can also administratively handle that.
We have a month.
Yeah.
Make it so, number 1.
So
Make it so.
I move to let HR handle that time period.
My man.
Second. Do you call a vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
May I revisit the date? Am I on? Is my microphone on? Okay, couldn't hear myself. I just want to make sure if we have a timeline. I may have a conflict on the 5th. It'd be better for me to have another day, but if we know time, maybe I can make sure, or is this something that we need to block off the entire day for? Do we know?
We have the COE meeting ahead of that.
So I would anticipate, what, 2 o'clock? Maybe 2 o'clock again, or 2?
I block off the whole.
I was saying, are you free later in the day?
I would be free. I should be available 2 o'clock or running maybe by 2:30 at the latest, or at the earliest. And yeah, and the rest of the day is fine up until 6:30.
You more comfortable with
Okay.
2:30?
I would be.
Okay.
Yes.
On the 5th at 2:30?
This is, I'm sorry, committee March 5th.
March 5th, yes.
At 2:30 to commence the interview process, round robin style.
Correct.
Correct. And we'll be here with the Ethics Commission, 5 of us anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I may. The county attorney and county administrator processes had 4 candidates each, by my recollection, and those processes ran the round robin style roughly 3.5 to 4 hours.
Okay.
Certainly, the committee can ask
Buy
questions
pizza.
until they believe they can make a decision on their selected candidate. Would the committee like to set a time limit for each candidate's response to each question? For the county attorney and county administrator, it was, I believe, 3 minutes per response.
How many questions did you ask?
This is,
For the county administrator, there were approximately 14 questions. For the county attorney, there were approximately 7 questions. One from each, in one of those, it was 2 commissioners asked 2 questions. The other one, every commissioner asked 1 question.
Mr. Chair, I'd be fine with 3. If you can't answer a question in 3 minutes, you probably are.
Second.
So just for discussion, even with the county attorney, It took 3.5 hours.
I'll defer to Dr. Khan, who indicates about 2.5 hours for a county attorney.
It depends, I guess, on how much we talk.
There was in those processes as well an opportunity for a follow-up question after each question asked, and the candidate had a limit of, I believe, 1 minute to respond to that follow-up question. So if the committee would like to integrate that into the process, we'd be happy to.
I guess we have 7 people, so so it would follow, as you said, 7 questions with follow-up. If anybody, okay, if it's a motion, 7 questions with a follow-up allowed?
I don't know that you need to make a motion.
Okay. Then I will.
It's going to take as long as it takes. It's an important job.
And if I can, I just want to point out that the contract that's negotiated ultimately has to go before the Board of County Commissioners. So we want to build in enough time to make sure that's all done by June to ensure there's no lapse. So just in everyone's back of their mind.
So we have the date, we have the time, 2:30 on March 5th. We have, we'll begin making notifications to the 4 selected candidates to begin the background check process and identify to them the date and time for their interviews. We have some sample questions that we can provide to the board, to the committee, and they can use that as they deem fit. We also have a brief document that indicates what questions not to ask, and those are related to protected characteristics like race, religion, gender, national origin, which we'll provide to the committee as well.
Great. Thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you, committee.
Just a question on the questions. You're going to send out, and then if we have a suggestion, we send it back to you, then you send it back out? We have to do this within the next month? How does that work?
I wouldn't recommend that because that could be considered communicating with other members of the committee.
You just send it back to HR?
But then he sends it out to the other
okay.
members. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing that. You can ask whatever questions you want.
That in the follow-up or
Yeah,
something like that? Okay.
I just
So we
wouldn't
don't have to have one final list before we start on the 5th?
No requirement on our end from HR.
Okay, that was my question.
We would just certainly advocate that each candidate is asked the same question as the next candidate.
Are we adjourned?
Motion to adjourn.
I don't think you need a motion. You can just state it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Oh, no, hold on. Can we please have one moment? We have Stuart Robinson here from the Office of Inspector General. He is the Director of Investigations that would like to speak briefly.
Hi, thank you very much for allowing me the occasion of Chair Kreidl's last meeting on the committee after many years of extraordinary service. I have a letter. John Kerry is out of state this week, but I have a letter that he wrote on behalf of our office and himself that we'd like to read to Chair Kreidl. IG Kerry writes as follows. Dear Chair Kreidl, on behalf of the Office of the Inspector General, please accept my deepest gratitude for your extraordinary 12 years of dedicated public service, volunteering your valuable time and expertise as a member of the Inspector General Committee. Your contributions as a member of the committee in providing your keen insights have been especially beneficial to me and to my office. Your seasoned perspective as a certified public accountant, certified forensic accountant, certified information technology professional, and certified forensic consultant proved invaluable in your questions and suggestions to improve our audits and investigations. While your presence on the committee will be greatly missed by my office, the standards of excellence you helped establish will continue to guide our work for years to come. I wish you the very best in your next chapter. Again, thank you for your tireless advocacy and for your exemplary service to my office and to the citizens of Palm Beach County. Sincerely, John Gary, Inspector General.
Well deserved.
Very kind.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Now, motion to adjourn?
Oh, now we can do the motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.